The audience's chatter filled the air until the stage manager gave the hand signal. 3, 2, 1, cue applause. The theme music of The View played as the announcer's voice rang out. Please welcome, Senator Tim Scott. From behind the curtain, Tim emerged with an easy stride, his tailored navy suit crisp, tie perfectly knotted. He gave a quick wave to the audience before making his way to the long, curved table at center stage. The bright studio lights hit him squarely, forcing him to squint for just a second. Joy Behar was already leaning back in her chair, scanning him with a measured look, while Whoopi Goldberg leaned forward, elbows on the desk, her expression unreadable. Sunny Hostin had a pen in her hand, tapping it lightly against a notepad, as if mentally preparing her opening line of questioning. Sarah Haynes offered a polite smile, though even that felt tentative. Tim shook hands with each co-host, making brief but direct eye contact with all of them. The audience clapped politely, but there was an underlying hum, half anticipation, half tension. As he sat down in the center chair, he adjusted his mic and glanced briefly toward the cameras. In that moment, he seemed fully aware that this wasn't going to be a warm and fuzzy interview. Still, Tim smiled. Thanks for having me, he said smoothly. It's good to be here. The hosts didn't reply right away. The pause was brief, but it hung in the air like the opening seconds before a boxing match, both sides sizing each other up before the first bell. The moment the polite greetings were out of the way, Sunny Hostin straightened in her chair, pen still in hand but now resting across her notes. She glanced briefly at Joy, then back at Tim. Her voice came out calm, but the edge in it was unmistakable. Senator Scott, she began, you often speak about unity and opportunity, but how can you defend your political stance when so many in your own community, people you claim to represent, strongly disagree with your views? A few audience members murmured, shifting in their seats. The camera cut to a close-up of Tim, who didn't flinch. Instead, he let the question hang for a moment, as though giving it the weight it deserved. He slowly leaned back in his chair, hands folded neatly in front of him. Sunny, he said in a measured tone, I think disagreement is one of the greatest freedoms we have in this country. Sunny tilted her head slightly, eyebrow raised, waiting for more. But, he continued, leaning forward now, the question isn't whether they disagree with me. The real question is, are we willing to listen to each other long enough to find common ground? Or are we just trying to score points in a debate? Some light applause broke out from a section of the audience, though it quickly faded as Sunny's expression hardened. She tapped her pen twice against her notepad, once, twice, then placed it down deliberately. Well, she replied, voice cool, listening is one thing, but actions speak louder than words. The tension was now visible. Joy smirked slightly, Whoopi glanced toward the next cue card, and the energy in the room shifted from cautious politeness to something more charged, like the air before a storm. Tim didn't break eye contact with Sunny. The studio lights cast a faint gleam on his suit as he leaned forward slightly, elbows resting lightly on the table. His voice was even, almost gentle, but every word was deliberate. Sunny, he began, in my experience, listening isn't passive. It's an action, it's a choice, and it's the first step toward actually solving problems. A ripple of quiet agreement came from a small group in the audience. Tim glanced briefly toward them, then back to the panel. You know, he continued, I've sat in living rooms with families who can't agree on politics, but they still pass the mashed potatoes. They still care about each other. If we can do that at a dinner table, why can't we do it here? The line drew a few laughs from the audience, soft, not mocking, and even Sarah Haynes cracked a faint smile. Joy, however, kept her arms crossed, eyes locked on Tim like she was waiting for an opening to pounce. He let the moment breathe before adding, the truth is, America's strength isn't in how loud we shout, it's in how well we hear each other when we disagree. That line drew a wave of applause, louder this time, forcing the hosts to wait before speaking. Sunny's jaw tightened slightly as she reached for her coffee cup, buying herself a few seconds. When the applause died down, Joy leaned forward, clearly ready to reframe the conversation. Her voice cut through the lingering claps. Listening is fine, Senator, she said, but your policies hurt the very people you claim to represent. The audience made a soft, collective, ooh, sound, sensing the shift. The air thickened, and the real confrontation was about to begin. Joy Behar leaned forward, her red-framed glasses sliding slightly down her nose. She clasped her hands on the table, but her tone was anything but relaxed. "Listening is fine, Senator," she said, her voice steady but loaded, "but your policies hurt the very people you claim to represent. You talk about opportunity, but opportunity without safety nets just leaves people behind. And frankly," she glanced at the audience for emphasis, "a lot of us don't buy the picture you're painting." A murmur of approval came from a few in the crowd, while others sat stone-faced, waiting for Tim's reaction. Tim didn't rush to answer. He adjusted his mic with one hand, straightened in his chair, and locked eyes with Joy. The pause was long enough to make Whoopi glance toward the control booth, as if wondering whether the delay was intentional. "Joy," he began slowly, "you just made a very bold claim, that my policies hurt people. That's not a light accusation." Joy tilted her head, as if inviting him to challenge her further. "It's not an accusation, it's an observation," she replied. Tim's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but not anger either. "An observation is something you see. But what I'm hearing sounds more like a conclusion you've already decided on." The audience gave a low, in unison, as if watching a chess game where a big move was coming. Joy leaned back slightly, but her eyes stayed fixed on him. "So you're saying I'm wrong?" "I'm saying," Tim replied evenly, "that maybe the picture you're looking at is only half the frame." The room went noticeably quieter. Even the faint hum of the cameras seemed louder in the pause that followed. Whoopi, sensing the brewing tension, subtly gestured to Sunny with her pen, signaling that things were about to get interesting. Tim's posture shifted. No longer leaning back, no longer just reacting. He placed both hands flat on the table, his voice lowering just enough that the audience had to lean in to hear. "Joy," he said, with the weight of someone choosing every word carefully, "if you truly believe my policies hurt people, then I have an invitation for you." Joy's brow furrowed slightly, but she kept her gaze locked on him. "Come walk with me," Tim continued, his tone steady but carrying a quiet intensity. "Come to my hometown in South Carolina. Meet the single mothers who started their own businesses because they were given opportunity, not dependency. Talk to the kids in after-school programs who now have scholarships because of community investment, not government handouts. See for yourself." The audience erupted in applause, louder this time, with a few people even standing. The co-hosts exchanged quick glances, unsure how to follow it. Tim didn't ride the applause, he let it fade before delivering his final blow. "I'm not here to win an argument, Joy. I'm here to show you that facts don't have a party. And when we start caring more about results than rhetoric, people's lives change for the better." A hush fell over the room, not awkward silence, but the kind that comes when everyone realizes the conversation just hit a deeper note. Joy opened her mouth, but nothing came out immediately. She looked toward Sunny, as if to pass the ball, but Sunny only pressed her lips together, tapping her pen against the desk. From the corner of the set, the floor manager gave a subtle hand signal, telling the hosts they had another minute before commercial break. Whoopi glanced at the cue card in front of her, then back at Tim, her eyes narrowed, as if she knew this moment was going to go viral. For a moment, it was as if someone had cut the audio feed. No one spoke. The clapping had stopped. Even the faint shuffling from the audience died away. Tim's words seemed to hover in the air, still vibrating in the space between him and the panel. He sat there calmly, hands resting on the table, his eyes scanning each co-host one by one, not challenging, but waiting. Whoopi's pen, usually tapping when she was deep in thought, lay perfectly still on the desk. She leaned back in her chair, looking almost amused, though there was a flicker of surprise in her eyes. Sunny Hostin kept her gaze lowered at her notes, as if searching for a question, but the pen in her hand was frozen mid-scribble. Sarah Haynes, normally quick with a follow-up, looked between Joy and Tim like she wasn't sure who was supposed to speak first. Joy Behar's lips were pressed into a thin line. She glanced toward the audience, perhaps expecting a reaction to bail her out, but the crowd remained oddly reserved. No clapping, no booing, just a few camera phones raised to capture the moment. The silence stretched longer than TV comfort zones allow. 8 seconds, 9, 10. Behind the cameras, a producer shifted nervously, mouthing to the stage manager, "We need to move." But no one wanted to break it. Not yet. Finally, the sound that pierced the stillness wasn't a voice. It was the faint hum of the stage lights above, reminding everyone that they were still live, still in front of millions, still locked in a moment they couldn't rewind. It was Sarah Haynes who finally broke the spell. She straightened in her chair, offering a faint but genuine smile. Her voice was softer than usual, as if not wanting to shatter the fragile quiet. "Well, that's certainly something to think about," she said, letting out a short, almost nervous laugh. Tim returned the smile. Small, controlled. "That's all I'm asking," he replied, his tone as calm as it had been from the start. The audience gave a polite round of applause, though it lacked the earlier energy. It wasn't disapproval, it was the kind of clap people give when they're still processing what they've heard. Whoopi cleared her throat and shuffled her note cards, clearly signaling they needed to move on. All right, let's keep it rolling," she said with a faint chuckle, but even she seemed to recognize that the energy in the room had shifted. Sunny took a sip of her coffee, avoiding direct eye contact with Tim, while Joy busied herself flipping a page in her notes, though it was clear she wasn't reading. The producers in the control room were whispering rapidly into their headsets, trying to decide whether to pivot to a lighter segment or stay with politics. The screen in front of them showed a close-up of Tim, still composed, still sitting upright, as if the moment had gone exactly the way he'd planned. Even as the next topic was introduced, there was a subtle undercurrent, like a bass note you couldn't quite hear but could still feel. The earlier tension hadn't fully dissolved, it was simply hiding in the background, waiting for the next spark. The final segment wrapped with light laughter over a cooking demonstration, but the earlier exchange still hummed beneath the surface. As the credits began to roll, the audience clapped, some glancing at Tim as if they were still mulling over what they'd witnessed. Tim stood, unhurried, and shook each co-host's hand. Sarah gave a warm squeeze, Sunny a polite nod. Whoopi met his handshake with a brief, knowing smile. Joy hesitated for half a second before extending her hand. Her grip was firm, but her eyes darted away quickly. He stepped off the stage into the maze of black curtains and cables, the sounds of the live set fading behind him. The air backstage was cooler, quieter. Crew members moved around with headsets, giving him quick nods of acknowledgement. A producer caught up to him, a tablet tucked under her arm. She leaned in and whispered, "That was something. You got them thinking." Tim gave a small chuckle, adjusting his tie as they walked toward the exit. "That was the point," he said, almost under his breath. Near the stage door, an intern handed him a small bottle of water. He accepted it with a, "Thank you," then glanced back toward the bright glow spilling from the set. For a brief second, he stood still, listening to the faint echo of the applause from earlier, replaying the silence in his mind. Outside, the New York air hit him, brisk, sharp. A few people waiting near the barricade called his name. He walked over, shook hands, posed for a couple of quick selfies. Then, slipping into the black SUV waiting at the curb, he closed the door and leaned back. The city's noise surrounded the vehicle, but inside, there was only the quiet satisfaction of a man who knew he'd left a mark without raising his voice.